Hello and welcome to Write Your Memoir because you know you're ready. You know you're ready to write your memoir, and you've probably already been writing a portion of it, or maybe you're journaling, or you're just keeping notes on what is happening in your life. And when people start writing memoir, it's not like they set out to write a whole memoir. They don't start on page one. They sort of jot notes while something big is happening in their life. And we're going to get started in 1 minute, but I want to welcome you to write your memoir, because your story is really a carrier for your message. And that's the important part of memoir. And that, I'm having a random time. And that's the important part of your memoir. So thank you for being here and showing up for yourself, and to find the path for your message and your story to come into the world. There are so many ways that can happen, and not every book needs to be shoot to number one on the first day. In fact, most of them don't. Before we get started, I want to make sure that just tell me who you are and where you are. Put it in the chat, and at least say hi as you come in. I really appreciate it. I am Allison Lane, and I help women get book deals and launch their books. And if that is interesting to you, you can put bestseller in the chat, and I will reach out to you, and maybe we can have a virtual coffee. We can connect. Now, back to you and your memoir. If you are writing memoir, or you want to write memoir, or even essays, let's first talk about what memoir is and what it is not. A memoir is very structurally and at its core a novel about something about you. It could be written like a thriller. It could be written like a beach read. It could be written in essays. It could be poetry. Even though, it could be poetry about you. Whatever the format, whatever the genre, it still can be memoir. So you can write nonfiction poetry that's about you, and therefore it's memoiristic. I don't even know if that's a word, but it probably is. It should be. So whatever your format, you can write a sonnet that's memoir, or a short essay, or a limerick. It doesn't have to be some, grand heroine's journey. It could be 200 words or one line. So when we start writing memoir, we don't really start with the, end in mind. And it's not a good way. It's not a good step to actually just start on page one. The most important thing about putting your memoir into the world is to know that you are capturing what the feelings, the senses, the language, the dialogue, that put us in the scene of what is happening in that moment. And whether you're writing, during the time you're experiencing this scene, or 30 years later, what we want to see in memoir is we want to feel like we're in the room with you, or riding the horse with you. We want to feel like we're approaching that problem and that challenge with you, and that you're not telling us about it later and kind of summarizing it for us, but that we are essentially like with you. Um, so that might mean that you are, um, going backpacking. And instead of saying, when I was 17, I backpacked across the Alps, well, that's just telling me, but I want to feel like I'm with you. And so you're going to write it like, uh, as if you yourself are a character. If it's easier for you to write about yourself and your story, um, it might be easier for you to write about yourself and your story if you give yourself a different name while you're writing it. And later you can do a search and replace for that name. So if you always wanted your name to be Tracy, now's the time. Um, there was I knew a girl in elementary school whose name was Tracy, and I thought it was the coolest name. Turns out Allison is also a very popular name, and so I just kept that. So the thing about memoir, when you're writing it, is that no one really knows how it's going to end up, and that's okay, because you might have many different objectives and goals for your memoir. You might be collecting your family history, and you want to put to paper um, the things that your grandma used to say to you when she was teaching you how to play four corners or hearts. And my Oma used to teach me all these card games, and we would spend the afternoon, and it was so complicated. And then we'd bet with a penny. And I never won, but it was still, kept my mind sharp. And I mean, I was 8, but still. And so if I were to write that as a memoir, I would just want to put it on, like, capture the moment. What did it smell like in her kitchen? Where did we sit? Were we next to a window? Was it winter or summer? I mean, it was Wisconsin, so it was always a little bit chilly back in the 70s, because that was before, the global climate change changed everything, or before we really felt it. But that's what we want, right? Now, however that ends up, me capturing that and giving it, maybe I bind it and give it to, like, keep it as a family history. I could put it on ancestry.com. It's still memoir. I could publish an essay and submit that to a media outlet as a first person essay, and that's still memoir. I could fictionalize it, and that is called auto fiction. But we still know it's my story, which is fine, but it's still memoir. So there are so many different ways to get your memoir out there. And I say out there, like out of your brain and onto the page. You could bind something and give it to every family member. You could put these stories together along with stories from other community members and give that to your local historical society. You could self-publish your memoir about working on a cattle ranch in the 60s or in the 80s, or working as a bartender in Hell's Kitchen in the 90s, which I was not a bartender, but I did go bar hopping in Hell's Kitchen in the 90s. But I'm not going to write about that because that is embarrassing. Whatever you're writing about, you capture that and then worry about how it's going to get into the world later, because you might want to just keep it for you for a while or figure out how it factors in. When you are writing, when you eventually get to the point where you're like, okay, I really want to share this, there are many, many ways to share it. And to get published with a traditional publisher or a hybrid publisher, or even to self-publish. And all of those publishers, a traditional publisher is like a Simon and Schuster or a Random House, a uh, William Moreau or HarperCollins, and all of these big publishers have different imprints within them. And we call them traditional, but essentially they, in the past, have require a book proposal, a query letter, and a literary agent. They give you an advance for your book, and then you go and write the book. Unless it's memoir, in which case it needs to be complete, or fiction, in which case it needs to be complete when you submit. However, if you're writing any other version of nonfiction, and any other subgenre of nonfiction, you don't need to write the whole thing. And this is an important part about memoir. Every book today has some element of personal storytelling. And you can tell just by looking at the book description, anytime it says part memoir, part business manifesto, or part personal storytelling, part advice column, like, whoa, all the books out today, they're all better because the author has some level of personal storytelling that's woven in. Otherwise, all those books would feel like textbooks, and no one's interested in that. So what I'd like to do is show you a couple of types of memoir and how they're packaged and why they're packaged this way. Because let's start with this is Class by Stephanie Land. It is new. She also wrote the memoir Maid, as in like a house cleaner, which is my absolute favorite memoir of 2021. Or was it 2022? It was 2021. And then this is her new one. Now, the subtitle is A Memoir of Motherhood, Hunger, and Higher Education, because she is truly an advocate for the underserved and the underprivileged and the unhomed of people living at or below the poverty line. So she's truly amazing. And her memoir Maid was translated into a Netflix series that is highly lauded, and you should watch. Although I couldn't bring myself to watch it because I love the book so much that I didn't want the series to overtake the book. I don't know if I'll ever watch the series, but I know people loved it, but I couldn't do it. Now, her book reads like a novel. It is a freaking, and Maid also was, it just reads like freaking fiction, and you're just jaw dropping, like, I cannot believe that this is happening. And so that is how this is, how she writes. But she started out writing first person essays for the website Scary Mommy, scarymommy.com. One of her essays caught attention. It got shared a lot. And that essay, which was maybe 700 words, essentially was the impetus for her book Maid. So if you can write 700 words, you can follow Stephanie Land's path, and you should be. Whatever you do, don't go into a cave and say, I'm going to write my memoir and come out and be like, ta-da. You know, if you feel called to write, then you should be writing. And part of writing is sharing your work, either publishing it or sharing it amongst other writers to get feedback and to get better. And if that interests you, DM me in the chat and I will reach out to you, because I host compassionate critique sessions once a month and that are free, and you can come and get your work, or you can bring a page or a priority or a problem, and other people who are also writing can give you compassionate feedback and direction. Plus, I'm there and I give everybody compassionate feedback and direction. Okay, so this is one. This is one type of memoir. This is The Year of the Horses. This is Courtney Mum, and it literally says a memoir here. However, this book could clearly be, it is what we call braided, because it is part memoir and then is interspersed with the history of horses, of breeding, how communicating with animals connects us to the world and ourselves. And it really could have been published as general nonfiction, or narrative nonfiction, or even history. Most times with memoir, you'll find some element that's added that gives you access to maybe claim another genre. Courtney has written 5 books in 5 different genres. So, this is the one that she chose. And it is a page turner, but also then it interspersed. There are these moments where you're like, oh, okay, time out. Now we're going to understand why her connection with a rescued horse was so meaningful. And then there's a, kind of an insertion of some history or perspective about horses. Okay, here's another one. This is Emptying the Nest by Morgan Baker. She's a client, and this is an award winner already. It came out in late 2023, and it says, Getting Better at Goodbyes. Now, this book came together as Morgan is a seasoned writer, and she's a professor at Emerson College. But this is her first book. She's 65 years old. I mean, she's open about this. I'm not spilling the tea. Her book started out as essays that she pulled together in order to tell a bigger story. It doesn't necessarily read like a beginning to end novel, but it hangs together. And so it feels like you're reading about her life, but it didn't start that way. And it is funny and just touching. And I love it so much. And this is to say that there are a lot of ways to write your memoir. And I mean, she has just testimonials and endorsements from so many amazing people. Okay, and then this is one more. Farm Family. This is by Jane Lee Rankin. She, the subtitle is A Solo Mom's Memoir of Finding Home, Happiness, and Alpacas. And she runs an alpaca farm in North Carolina, which is amazing, because when she started her farm, she had never had an alpaca before, and she just felt called to do this. Now, this book reads like a beach read. The farm the house that she buys is haunted. There are all sorts of predators. real and imagined. It is something that she spent years writing and trying to capture as she knew that she needed to start her life, leave one state and sort of start anew as a solo mom and reclaim what motherhood was going to be for her. And as she did that, she captured these moments, which then came through in this book that feels like a novel. But she didn't just go into a hole and write the whole book. She shared it. She was in writers' groups. She also wanted to document the story of how her farm came to be, because her farm, her alpaca farm called Apple Hill Farm, was first runner-up for Small Farm of the Year in North Carolina last year. And so this is an important book and moment for her. So these are all types of books. You know what? There are so many other ways that you can be sharing what you know and what you've experienced, especially if you're thinking, well, I want to share my story because I want to inspire people, or because I want people to know that they can also do this. Then that means that you have more to share than just your experience. Because sometimes people say, oh, I'm writing my memoir because I want people to know that they can do XYZ. Well, if you are waiting for someone else to do the mental math it takes to translate your story into something that they are empowered to do and that they should take action on, you're asking too much. That's not how people read memoir. It sounds nice. Oh, I want to inspire people, but that's not how, when people read memoir, they don't read about your adventure and think I can have that adventure too. Or wow, I can apply that type of resilience to my life. It's simply unfortunate, but you really do have to tell people, this is what I experienced. And now that you're in the world, it's a different time. Here's what I would suggest for you. Or based on my experience, here are the top 7 actions you could take today to avoid what I experienced. That's another way. But that when we say, oh, I want to inspire people, they are not inspired. Inspired means inspired to take action. Mostly what readers are is impressed. And being impressed is very different from being inspired. And since I know that when people write memoir, they're hoping to inspire people to understand, to believe that something is true, or to take action, I want to challenge you to think about what your goal is. Perhaps you just want people to be inspired to apply the lessons of your family to their life today, or to inspire community members to connect with one another. And if that's true, even as you're writing, think about how you can invite people to actually interpret the scene or the action that they're seeing on the page to what they can do, even if you put it at the end of the essay, or if it's how you talk about your lesson that you learned leading marketing for Fortune 500 company in 1985. Whatever it is that you experience that you think, oh, I'm going to write my memoir, try and think about your audience and what you want them to know or believe or do based on reading what you experienced, or this novel or this essay about you, because they also want to know, Like, why am I reading this? And a lot of people who write nonfiction often think, um, oh, I'm going to write memoir about my time in business in 1995. Like, ooh, do I want to read about your experience in business, or do I want to learn from the anecdotes you're going to tell, but also apply them to my experience in business today? And if that's you, I would say still write these scenes as memoir and then get in touch, because your opportunity is then to bridge the gap between what you experienced and what you would advise today. The hardest part for most nonfiction writers, whether they're writing a relationship book or a business book, finance, entrepreneurship, um, science, is inserting anecdotes and scenes that help us understand that the model or the method or the lesson that they're trying to convey. Without the story, it feels like a textbook and it's boring. So, any memoir that you're writing, whether it's a scribble as you're sitting in the parking lot of your kid's school waiting to pick up, which is what I do, or you're writing an entire 100 pages about your experience starting a business in 1973, then that's what we want to know. After you write your story, then how do we apply it today? And that's the next step in crafting your book and thinking about, well, who's going to read it? The first step to memoir is just writing it down. And there are 3 tips I'm going to give you about how to start the writing. Start writing doesn't mean sit down, have like a inspiration place, a quiet place, and get zen and block off 4 hours so that you can sit down to the blank page and just start writing. That is so, I don't know if that's like a movie myth, but that makes it hard. There's so much expectation of like, okay, now I have the perfect cup of Earl Grey tea and, Beethoven's in the background. Don't put that kind of pressure on yourself. Instead, do this. Get a notebook. Literally from CVS, you can get one of these. It's like $1.79. And these notebooks come in all kinds of colors. I buy, 5 at a time because they come in all the Crayola colors. And whenever you have a random thought, scribble it down. The other thing, and I say random thought, like whenever you have a memory that you think, I want to capture that, then you can scribble down whatever it is that you are thinking, like maybe a saying that your mother used to say, or a situation that you experienced that you think, well, that's really relevant to this lesson I'm trying to share in my mentorship group. So first, capture those stories when they appear, so that when you do sit down at the blank page, that you're not starting from the blank page, that you already have kind of a cheat sheet. If you have a long commute, don't use the notepad, use voice to text. You can use Claude.ai, or even make voice notes for yourself and just talk to the empty car and capture the stories, but let the technology do the writing for you and capture it all. You're driving for more than 20 minutes anyway. let the AI capture it for you. And that way, I mean, in 15 minutes, you'll have 1,500 words or more, depending. Don't stop your stream of consciousness. Don't try and speak in complete sentences. The writing that is conversational and captures your voice it's more interesting anyway. Nobody wants to read, noun, verb, adverb. Like, just get it out. And oftentimes that voiciness, that tone, your personal storytelling style is so much more interesting when you are speaking. And then you'll be so much happier with the start. And then, of course, your next step is eventually, yes, spend 10 minutes, 15 minutes and write something out. But no, do you need 4 hours altogether to start writing? You don't. Most books are not written in, for devotion of 4-hour chunks. They're not, because that's not the way people live. So use the convenient elements that we have today, just a little spiral notebook and a pen that you like. And because if you're in the car or on the go, you're going to want a clicky pen, and you're going to want ink that does not bleed or need to dry, because that's a bummer. And make sure that you have some app on your phone that you like that works for you. Voice to text is okay. Sometimes it turns off. Otter.ai is another great one. Dragon Dictation is another dictation tool. Claude.ai. You can dictate 100,000 words. That's an entire memoir and a half, because most memoir today are around 60,000 words. So go to town. If you have a hour-long commute, imagine how much you can get out. And then when you get to your office or wherever you're going, you can ask Claude, organize my stories. And it'll use your words, it won't summarize your words, to give you something that you can start with and work with. So those are the ways that you can start your memoir. Think about where it's going, what your purpose is. So let me back up. There are a couple of ways to start writing memoir and to get it out of your brain and onto the page. Number one, start writing, whatever it is. Don't make it hard, make it easy. A spiral notebook, an AI on your phone. Capture the stories and the scenes when they come to you. Number two, think about your purpose. Are you capturing these stories for local historical society, for the community, for your family? Do you just want to get them, capture them for yourself so that you can read them later? Do you want to publish essays, but not an entire book? There are many, many ways to publish a book nowadays. So all of these options are available to you, maybe just to capture your personal legacy and to, give it to your children or your grandchildren. All of these ways it's helpful to know what your purpose is, and so that you can capture what's going to be meaningful to the person who reads it. And you don't have to know, but it's a place to start. And then third, you can get inspired by the memoir that are already out there. Keep in mind, many times when you're reading even a business book, there's personal storytelling in it. So let's see, these books behind me. So this is Memoir, Goodbye Again. So that's my client, Candace Cahill. So that is reads like a novel. And then over here, Tracy Otsuka wrote ADHD for Smartass Women, which on even when it was out for only 8 days, it was number 60 on Amazon. It went right to bestseller status, and it is doing phenomenally. It is a book meant to help women see their ADHD as a strength and a superpower and really claim their neurodivergency, which, if you have ADHD, say ADHD in the chat because I do. But there's a ton of personal storytelling in there. It's not memoir, but it's memoiristic. And she's hilarious. Hilarious. So get inspired by the books out there and by the storytelling out there. You can see a lot of memoir type stories, even in videos on LinkedIn. So look for that because that makes those stories memorable and then applicable to the next person. And that is how you can start writing your memoir and think about how it's going to end up in the world. If you have any questions about what your next step should be, please get in touch. And you can DM me. Just put bestseller in the chat and I will get in touch. You can get in touch at Allison@LaneLit, literature, lanelit.com. That's Allison@lanelit.com. And I will see you next week.